to it, let's get to some quick sips. And the first one here is, will we see a lot of players enter the portal after the spring game, Sip? Right now, just to give a little bit of information here, this is as of today, 1,564 scholarship players entered the portal since August 1st. 57 of them have withdrawn, one of those being Jamari Butler from Nebraska. 1,014 have committed, signed with new schools, and 493 remain in the portal. So, as of right now, Nebraska is actually doing quite well in this. Bill Connolly posted other P5 teams are shaping up pretty well and returning to production. Nebraska is one of them. We have over 100 scholarship guys right now on the team. So what that leads, Sip, is to spring ball coming up in a couple of months. And we don't think that there's a way that we're going to be keeping 100-plus guys on scholarship. So what do you envision happening at the end of the semester when spring ball gets done?
Yeah, it's not as simple as saying a bunch of guys are going to transfer. It's probably a pretty involved discussion. Some guys will be put on medical, right? You don't want to put too many guys on medical. I mean, you got to pay for all that. Some guys will matriculate on their own. And some guys you can take care of with name, image, and likeness deals. So that part of the equation has sort of, I don't know. There's a lot of angst right now because what'd you say? Nebraska's a little 103 or 104 scholarships right now, and they got to be at 85. I haven't seen it like this. I got to tell you, it's interesting. Some people will say, yeah, they're flipping the roster. I don't look at it like that. They're not. You got 10 returning starters on defense, or 11 if you count Javin Wright, who started one game. You got all those you got 6 or 7 returning offensive linemen, a returning starting quarterback, a returning starting running back. You're not flipping those guys. Mm-hmm. Those guys ain't going anywhere. So yeah, there'll be definitely some guys that go in. Would it be a mass exodus? I don't envision that, but they're going to have to. You got to get to 85 somehow. So it's going to be very interesting.
Sip, can you give a little? Sorry, Dave. But can you give a little bit of insight? How does NIL work with this? I've heard people say NIL can take over, but I mean, so if 20 guys go on NIL, is it conceivable you could have 85 scholarships and 20 NIL guys, or what does that mean when someone says
a lot of money?
Yeah,
it's
conceivable.
It's conceivable, but it's not likely. Yeah, I mean they've already done it with certain guys, not a lot, but a few, that they've given them NIL packages that are basically commensurate with what a scholarship would be. And you can take care of some guys that way. You're not going to take care of 20 like that, but you can take care of a 4 or 5 like that. They've done it. They've done it all. They've done that already. There's walk-ons that are that they've given NIL money that's almost or equal to a scholarship.
So, follow-up question to that, because I mean, other schools, I remember when NIL launched, BYU had one big sponsor. He runs an athletic, fitness, something like that. And he gave essentially the equivalent of scholarship to all the walk-ons for that 1 year. I don't know if he's continued to do that, right? So there's an example. My clarifying question, I guess, is there, after that, I mean, if your scholarship and room and board is taken care of through an NIL deal, is there any difference on how the program has to treat walk-on opposed to scholarship? I mean, like, is the training table and everything exactly the same? You would never know.
That's a good question on the training table, but I don't think there's any big difference. No discernible difference. In fact, they wouldn't want it that way. It's a good question. The training table is you kind of got me on the training table. I'm not positive about that, but I'll double check that, but I think it's pretty. Everybody's treated the same. Walk-ons are treated as second-class citizens.
Right. Yeah.
I kind of remember on one of the tours with Tyler Kai, our friend over there. I think I remember him saying that some students have different types of meal plans in there too. So not every. Yeah, and so that, I mean, I guess, Dave, maybe that is the same thing where like maybe they have access to like 1 or 2 meals a day instead of 3 full or whatever, and they split it up that way. I'm not sure. I think they can buy more meals if they want to. So, yeah.
Only reason I asked the question is I'd be the only where I could see where some player would be like, no, I don't want to have an NIL equivalent scholarship because I'm missing out on this or that, right?
Yeah,
You
I
know,
don't think
and
that, I don't think that's I do not think that's a factor, David.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, it used to be you get room and board back in the day, and you still do in certain cases, but some NIL people are just getting their room, or they're eating, they're getting the extra money, so they're paying for their food too. Actually, I thought an interesting thing with the food was in Tunnel Talk last week, Husker Online Tunnel Talk talked about last season's one of the issues that some of the players are running into is they didn't like the food, and that was something that Coach Rule, that was like an early win, him meeting with the team and actually kind of making some changes there, but also requiring players in the process to eat at the stadium because they would take their food to go and not always eat it. Now that's not an option. So I thought that from a Tunnel Talk, I thought that was a pretty interesting perspective there on the food.
I was startled to hear that. I always thought the training table was quality food. Maybe some guys didn't like it. It's interesting, but that is an early win for Rule.
This is a good one here from Johnny,
thanks, Johnny.
GBR, who's former walk-on. When I walked on back, can you put that back up there, please, Boomer? When I walked on back in 2001, I had to pay to eat at the training table. Not sure if that's still the case though. And so that I don't. Again, that's 20 years ago. Yeah. But yeah, sure. So this goes back to supplementary.
That could be paid. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Good. Thanks for Johnny though. Thanks for weighing in.
That was
Can I ask a question about scholarships too? Because when you say that somebody's on scholarship, does that mean full ride, or is that could that also be partial? Because I know schools
football's only full. There's
only full ride because and I only ask because of this because there was problems here locally at UNC last year and the year before with because they were doing partial scholarships for players and pulling scholarships.
That's McCaffrey being McCaffrey.
Yeah, and so that's just a McCaffrey thing. Yeah. So so that's why I was asking. So okay, that answers my question.
Along the lines here, you got a couple of good pieces here, and I wanted to highlight them, Sip, that you've written in the last couple of weeks. One of them here, you were talking about the coach clearly having the priorities right. Says Rule already has made a few comments, in my opinion, that add to the notion that Trev Alberts made a good head coaching hire. Just a notion, we'll see in time. But that the coaching staff is youthful in nature, adding there's not going to be any celebrity coaches. There's not going to be guys with different agendas. We're going to have one purpose. There's a vision. The brand of football we play for, they all believe in. And on top of that, you really appreciate what he said next, that everyone spends too much time thinking about recruiting. They don't think enough about the guys on their own team, but those guys on our team, that's our job. Perfect answer. And I think that applies to what we're talking about here with the roster is that none of us today, we don't know what that roster is going to look like after spring ball, but I love the fact that we're at 100+ right now. I love the fact that we didn't push guys out before the spring even starts, which there are other new coaches, somebody to the west of us that came in and kind of told guys right away, get in the portal if you don't want to be here. I like the fact that, if you're treating the players right, I'd rather have them go through the process, go through mat drills this week, go through the offseason, go through spring ball. And then afterwards, now you get evaluated. And there's going to be some guys that naturally leave and attrition then. But I like how they're treating the guys so far.
Well, you said something critical, Matt. This week they do start work with the coaches, and it'll be hard. They will try to weed some kids out and do it the right way. That's the right way to do it. I've heard that the early days of Matt Rule and the way he approaches it are rough, and that's pretty standard fare in Division I college football. But they'll turn it up now. And there'll be some guys who won't make it through it. I mean. So that'll take care of a few probably. Is my guess. This is a guess, but I've already heard that it'll be rugged. They'll turn it way up. So, as far as the way I mean, Rule has struck a lot. I mean, I know what people see. We do when we do this. People say, "Oh, here we go with the off-season hype and everything." I'm not doing that. It's not that. It just there's a lot of things that strike the right chord with me. Maybe it's it's kind of old school stuff, but what he said about we got to worry about the players on our team. I did feel for years that in this market, we would the players that were guys who were proven, made plays in big games, etc., would almost become afterthoughts during the offseason. That everybody coming in was better. just
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
for no reason at all, except that they hadn't had a chance to fumble yet or throw a pick or miss an open field tackle. They just hadn't had a chance to do it yet. So naturally they were better. Drove me nuts. Still does. So when Rule said that, I like that. You know, take care of the guys on your own roster. That'll
Mhm.
help you recruit guys too, because they know that.
Well, it's that mentality of I need my own guys in here to succeed versus you
Yeah.
are my guys. The second I come in here, and we've heard that from Barthel with the running backs, we've heard that Cooper with the DBs. It's an open room. Come
Heard
on
it
in
today,
anytime
yeah.
you need to talk to me. You guys are my guys now, whether I recruited you here or not. And as a fan, that's what I want to hear.
Oh yeah, it's really refreshing. We haven't always heard that here, by the way. Not like this. So yeah. Oh,
I got a quick question, or maybe just a thought. Maybe it's just like, I think the Busting with the Boys interview was really interesting. There's been a lot of good quotes to your point, and even that intro by Ed Foley talking about how the coaching staff is very familiar with each other. And obviously they've done this kind of twice before with Temple and Baylor. And I think what we've learned over the last month or two is every situation's different, right? And it's easy to look at Baylor and Temple and see that they went 1-11 and 2-10, and all of it must have been exactly the same. And we learned a lot about those situations that were different. And the Baylor thing with this, it's interesting. We have 100 scholarship players, and my sense is that the coaching staff is reveling in that, because when they got to Baylor, they had lost so many players. They were down to like 45 scholarship players before they brought in their new, right? And that's like a whole class they lost essentially at Baylor in that transition from Briles to the interim to Rule. So I think, having the luxury of having 100+ scholarship players and walk-ons that are contributors is something they have to be just absolutely loving here, right? I mean, it's just such a different scenario. And I think in that Busting with the Boys interview, you talked about, does it have to be a slow burn, right? And I mean, let's not drink too much Kool-Aid. I'll give that to Rob. But, I think Rule's saying, hey, it doesn't have to be 1-11 or 2-10.
Right.
Do you feel like it's fair?
Yeah, that's totally fair. And you've heard that from most of these coaches. Now, we haven't heard from all of them, but when for instance, today, Terrence Knighton said, I mean, he said the words "we're not far away." He said, you don't know. He said he didn't know what to expect exactly roster-wise when he took the job. He didn't know when Rule hired him exactly what he was getting into roster-wise. But he says after looking at the guys we got and seeing the game tape, he said the words "we're not far away." Okay. Rule has said things along those lines. Evan Cooper said things along those lines. Tony White said things along those lines. They like what they got. Now, again, I know this is a hot button topic for some reason. I think a lot of people have agendas, and a lot of it is just and I'm not giving Frost a lot of credit here, but a lot of people, if you say what we're saying, they say, oh, you're just saying that because you're a Frost guy. So there's all these weird agendas. I'm not saying it because of that. I'm saying it because I respect what the guys did. I respect Casey Thompson a lot. I respect what he did last year a lot. I mean, not a little, a lot. I respect what the defense did a lot. They played pretty well, not great, but pretty well under adverse circumstances. And like I said, they got 11 guys back. I mean, they've started games.
I was literally just whispering into Honky's ear that same thing, that, all that credit, some of that has to go to Frost, whether people like it or not. He built a roster that we're talking about all the retention, and hell, Rule even went out and got Betts to come back. To me, that's crazy talk that he got that guy to come back. One of the best players that Frost recruited from the state, got him to come back in. That gives some credence to what Frost was doing. I know there's plenty of problems and you can say whatever you want about Frost. The win-loss record alone was enough to fire him, and I'm going to leave it at that. Yeah. But to me, there's no question what Rule's inheriting versus what Frost is inheriting is an entirely different program. And if we do have a quick turnaround, like a really quick turnaround, and have a winning season and go to a bowl game, some of that credit goes to Frost. Some of it goes to Mickey. Some of it goes to Bill Bush too, I think. But
yes, and the rest of the staff, really. I mean,
yeah. And I love that Rule has never gone out of his way to bus toss anybody. I know when Frost got here, we were all bus tossing Riley, and everybody wanted to hear that because we hated what our record was. but it is kind of refreshing at this point in the game for him to give credit to what Frost had done while building on it and moving it forward. So to me, like all the other fluff, this team's working harder than they ever did. This coaching staff's out there recruiting harder. Like I remember when Frost was jumping on planes, going back and forth across the country, recruiting Adrian, coaching a bowl game and all this other stuff. And everybody was all fine and high-fiving each other about that. Right. So, I mean, it's like throwing the baby out with the bathwater kind of thing. It's like there was some good that was done, even though everybody hates hearing it.
Oh, yeah, they do. I mean, it's interesting, though. I mean, I don't look at it. Well, I don't know. You got to remind people what happened at the end of the Riley tenure that last year. I mean, it didn't look like that this year.
No,
it didn't look anything like it did. I mean, what were you covering in Riley's last year? I mean, it was a debacle. It was blowout after blowout. Yeah. Team wasn't in it. Team quit. I mean, largely quit. People will say, "Well, that's because Sip." Come on, I mean, they quit because Eichhorst got fired during the year, and they knew. So then what happens? People come up with all these great excuses for quitting. I mean, it's amazing. It's like there's an excuse, but that's what we do. But you could say, well, these kids, their head coach got fired, and then their defensive coordinator got fired. They had reason to quit, and you know what? They didn't. They didn't quit. They kept fighting, and I respect that. When I say I respect, I'm not necessarily saying I respect Frost, but I do respect the players. And we're not talking. I always say kids. They're not all kids. Casey's my age. I mean, they're not all kids here now. That's not what you're talking about anymore. There's 23, 24-year-old guys over there.
And a lot of them are making way more money than any of us.
Yeah.
And look, I respect what Rule has done to not lose all these kids. Because I'll tell you something that I know we would have said, and a lot of people were saying this back in October, November, is, gosh, I hope Mickey, obviously before everything happened, I hope Mickey and I hope Bush stick around at least. Because if we don't, we're starting over. We're losing all these guys. And it's a true credit to Coach Foley and the guys that came on there and talked to you today, and Coach Rule and everything, that those guys didn't leave. And namely, I guess, to kind of end this first quick sip, we did a poll about a month or a few weeks back. When Coach Frost was hired at NU, he said he wanted 5 scholarship quarterbacks. What do you think the right number is? 3, 4, 5, or basically let us know. We have over 1,800 votes here. 4 is the number that everyone said. And the reality is right now, because nobody has quit, we still have 6 guys on scholarship. Now, do we think that there's going to be 6 at the end of the semester? Probably not. Probably guys are going to start to move around, whether that's leave or switch.
Somebody's got to be a fullback.
Switch positions, something, right? But I think it's just it's a credit to Rule that he's kept the guys here. Now start doing mat drills, start doing off-season stuff, get to spring ball practice, and we'll go from there.
What's a mat drill?
Mat drill.
Is that like named after Matt Rule?
No,
MAT
drill.
Okay. Do they wrestle? What happens?
I mean, every staff does something a little different. You'll see all the videos,
I hear people throwing that term around like we all know what it means, and I don't know what that means.
It's a little bit of everything.
Is that like the circuit or the metabolic circuit?
Guys running around pulling things, teamwork stuff.
We don't need that again.
Cameras on tires. I don't know.
Rhabdo last time. If anybody gets Rhabdo this time, I'm out.
We get enough garbage buckets out there to puke in.
Stuff you do at 5 a.m. in February.